5 minutes.
Christian soldiers marching as to war, with the cross of Jesus going on before. Christ the royal master leads against the foe. Forward into battle, see his banners go. Onward, Christian soldiers, marching as to war, with the cross of Jesus going on before. Oh, for a faith that will not shrink, though pressed by every foe, that will not tremble on the brink of any earthly woe, that will not murmur or complain beneath a chastening rod, but in the hour of grief or pain will lean upon its God. A faith that shines more bright and clear when tempest rage without, that when in danger knows no fear, in darkness feels no doubt. Lord, give us such a faith as this, and then whate'er may come, we'll taste and hear the hallowed bliss of an eternal home. A charge to keep I have, a God to glorify, a never-dying soul to save, and fit it for the sky, to serve the present age, my calling to fulfill. Oh, may it all my powers engage to do my Master's will. Arm me with jealous care, as in thy sight to live, and O thy servant, Lord, prepare a strict account to give. Help me to watch and pray, and on thyself rely, assured if I my trust betray, I shall forever die. Rise up, O men of God, have done with lesser things, give heart and mind and soul and strength to serve the King of Kings. Rise up, O men of God, his kingdom tarries long. Bring in the day of brotherhood and end the night of wrong. Rise up, O men of God, the church for you doth wait, her strength unequal to her task. Rise up and make her great. Lift high the cross of Christ, tread where his feet have trod, as brothers of the Son of Man, rise up, O men of God. Let's edify.
The saints of professionalism and shenanigans. Welcome to our Acts study.
You are sounding so tired. So tired. So tired.
So tired.
Yes. There's no pep and vim in your greeting to anybody.
Welcome to our Acts study.
You're like those saints with professionalism and shenanigans. Welcome to our act study.
Hello,
Eeyore, huh?
Sam.
Shua, go tell Amos that he's got a message on Facebook. Go tell Amos to come here. Hello, Sam. Good to have you this evening. We lost a viewer just because of the tired introduction, I'm sure.
Oh boy.
I've got my raspberry lemonade. And no, you can't have any.
I don't want it. I don't want something I can't have.
If you were over here, you could have some.
Thank you. Hey, look what I got.
Looks like some lunch meat with toothpicks.
Good.
High in fiber and protein. Yum, yum.
What?
It looks like lunch meat with toothpicks. High in fiber and protein.
Yep.
Yum, yum.
Right. And cheese in them.
Yep.
What is this? Ham?
Yep.
Ham and cheese roll up.
Nice. Mason, did you make that yourself?
Yes. I did.
Good job.
My
And
sister used to
I'll
make
give
it.
you an A+ for presentation.
Thank you.
Is this my sample? Are you taking my plate back?
No.
What? I get to have them?
Yeah,
Oh.
you only get one bite. He's gonna eat the rest of them.
Yeah, I'm having 5 for my. I'm having 8 for myself. 8.5 for myself.
Wow.
I guess, CJ, you have a smaller stomach.
Yeah, I'm smaller.
Thank you.
No,
Yeah.
I said CJ has a smaller stomach.
No, he has a bigger stomach.
Well, then why did he only get 4 of them?
Dude.
Well, that's because I'm starving.
Okay. Tangent. Going off the rails.
We're ready for it. Where'd your background go?
Well, I'm gonna show y'all a picture.
Oh no.
This was this afternoon, yesterday afternoon lunch. I don't know if you all saw this, but it was a big burger. Big burger.
You ever have a Dagwood?
No.
Now that's a big burger. The funny thing is, Sam, he doesn't even know what a Dagwood is.
Nope.
That's because you've never read the Blondie comics.
Oh, there it is. All right. There's the side of it.
That didn't work.
Okay. And then double decker there. You kind of see that it's got 2 buns, right?
Yes. CJ, somebody's got lines over your face.
Oh my quackles.
Yes, your crackles. Sam was like, "That's what I was thinking." United. Okay, Ezra's got the tagging done. Did we get it shared to the readers chat group and the readers chat page? Yes, you got the shared to the chat group. Alicia, I need Amos. Sam says the younger generation are missing out on the old comics. That's true.
Yeah, because the comics, Sam, are coming to life, at least the Flash, and our TV shows.
No. This is way older than your comic books.
Oh, comic strips?
We're talking the comic strips from the Sunday papers.
Oh.
How people used to entertain themselves, back on the Sunday editions of the papers, or the daily papers, actually. Back when they used to have daily edition of papers instead of weeklies.
Would y'all pray for me? I got a ride to camp. My mom's gonna drive me. And, well, maybe, hopefully, if she can get a car. And I thought I asked my dad to meet me halfway in Indiana to pick me up, and he is working that weekend, so I do not know how I'm gonna get back.
Well, then. Yeah. You're walking to Michigan. You know what you'll have to do? Talking about Indiana, holler at Angie, see if she can bring you part way up to, and meet with Debbie and Pat, and then they can bring you up to the Michigan border and meet with Laura and or with Vera, and maybe they can bring you up even closer to, and we'll just have the Underground Railroad for CJ.
You know what? I know you're partly joking, but I'm not. That actually might work.
And you're right, I'm only partly joking.
I might have to do a little Facebook group and say, hey, I'll be in Indiana. Angie lives up
I think Angie's in Indiana. I'm not 100% certain, but I think she is. Oh, well, we're here for Acts class. Let's stuff our spirits full of food while CJ stuffs his mouth. We're going to begin with a recap of Acts chapter 20 as we have gotten so far. We finished a couple weeks ago with Acts chapter 19. Yay. And moved on to 20. And in 20, we pick up with Paul leaving Ephesus, heading to Macedonia, going into Greece, going back into Macedonia, and then heading from there to Troas, And we left off as he sailed away from Philippi, or rather, his companions going to Troas, and he and Luke going from Philippi. They come to Troas. It takes them 5 days by ship to get to Troas, and there we leave them at Troas for 7 days.
They went this way down from Philippi to Troas, or did they?
It says in verse 6, and we sailed away from Philippi after the days of unleavened bread, and came unto them to Troas in 5 days, where we abode 7 days. So they sailed from Philippi, which if we were to get into the nitty gritty and get in really close, we would see that Philippi is on the coast in one of the inlets of the sea up in there, and so that would make sense. As they're sailing away from Philippi, they sailed down to Troas, and it takes them 5 days by boat. And I would imagine, I haven't looked at it, but it sounds to me, if it's going to take them 5 days by boat to get there, we're dealing with a lot of rocks, probably some treacherous areas, because you can see that it's not that long of a distance. I say that, of course, by today with a motorboat, it probably wouldn't be that long of a distance, but it would likely, in smooth sailing conditions, probably take a couple of days at most to sail that distance. But we're dealing with something else, so I don't know. I haven't looked at the conditions. I just, looking and figuring with it being up in the inlets like that, it would probably be a case of some treacherous shoals and rocks and stuff like that.
Does that about bring us up to speed?
Well, we left off at 6.
Yep.
So, yeah, that brings us up ready for. I think we talked earlier. You want me to read from 7 through 12?
Yeah, 7 through 12.
So let's read Acts chapter 20, verses 7 through 12. Hello,
Craig.
And upon the first day of the week, when the disciples came together to break bread, Paul preached unto them, ready to depart on the morrow, and continued his speech until midnight. And there were many lights in the upper chamber where they were gathered together, and there sat in a window a certain young man named Eutychus, being fallen into a deep sleep. And as Paul was long preaching, he sunk down with sleep, and fell down from the third loft, and was taken up dead. And Paul went down and fell on him, and embracing him said, Trouble not yourselves, for his life is in him. When he therefore was come up again, and had broken bread and eaten and talked a long while, even till break of day, so he departed. And they brought the young man alive, and were not a little comforted.
All right, so on the first day of the week, but verse 6 is important. So we sailed from Philippi after the day unleavened bread. In 5 days, we joined them in Troas, where we stayed another week. Well, wait a minute. Why did Paul stay another week in? Why did Paul stay 3 more days? Well,
wait a minute. How many more days?
So 7 more days.
Okay. I thought you said 3. I wanted to make sure I didn't mishear.
Well, Is verse 6 a summary statement? We stayed in all 7 days, or is that the trip was 5 days, wasn't it? Yeah, sorry. They made the trip 5 days, so that would put them at, well, we don't know when they got there, but it wasn't the first day of the week. They waited for the first day of the week for some time there, so it's the beginning of the week. Yeah,
We're not told if this was on the first day of the week or not. What we are told though is that they waited, or that they abode there 7 whole days
right,
or 7 days. So it could have been that they got there on the first day of the week, but they got there late.
right,
We're not told. We just said that it's just said that it took them 5 days journey from Philippi to Troas, and then as they stayed in Troas for 7 days. And notice, when did they leave Troas?
Well, after the first day of the week, after they met together, right?
So if they stayed for 7 days
They got
and they
home,
left on the second day of the week, by my reckoning, that means then that they would have arrived on the second day of the week,
right?
or
Yeah,
late on the first, or so late on the first that it would be considered the second.
right. And so they stayed there uh, so that they could assemble with the saints. And that
Or,
tells us what?
or I'm going to throw another monkey wrench in your thinking. They actually left on the first day of the week.
That would still make sense. Make a lot of sense, actually.
It would, because and we'll get into that when you finish your point. But I just wanted to throw that one out there because that is still makes timeline. It still makes sense that they left either on the first day of the week. Remember Jewish calendar,
Right.
Jewish timeline, or they left on the second day of the week. But the first day of the week, it makes more sense.
Yeah.
So keep going.
So they stayed 7 days more, because the disciples were coming together to break bread. Now, now some have suggested this is a well, I shouldn't say that. So, I don't want to say some have suggested because I've never heard of this, but some may say this is just a common meal. Well, my question is, why wait to eat for 7 days? I I mean, this is a organized, as we're going to read here in the text, a organized assembly. It's the first day of the week meeting. Uh, that they broke bread to. They were there to break bread, meaning take of the Lord's Supper, as we'll see here in just a minute. You look like you had something to say.
Um, Basically, I have actually had that one you asked of me. People have asked that of me, or made that statement that this was just a common meal. Um, the I'm not trying to steal your thunder. I'm really trying to be patient and wait for you.
Should I just walk us through the text and then
Walk us
you?
through that verse and get through the points so I don't steal any thunder and let you do your thing.
So what? I was
Stop him hawing around the bush and get onto it, man.
I was about done with verse 7. I was
Oh, well,
into
walk through
verse.
verse 7. Let's get done with verse 7 because that's a very meaty verse.
So on the first day of the week, the disciples came together to break bread. Notice they came together for a specific purpose, and the purpose was to break bread, and it is coupled with Paul preaching unto them. Hold on to that as a snack for get it. Anyways, hold on to that. We're gonna make an interesting parallel. 18 chapters previous, there was a neat parallel with Acts chapter 2. But Paul preached unto them, ready to depart on the morrow, and continued his speech until midnight. Now, growing up, I thought this was Paul giving a all day meeting. It very well could be, but we gotta remember that their midnight was, if I'm reading this right, Paul preached unto them until the breaking of the next day, which would be for us 6 p.m. Am I
AM.
correct? 6 a.m.
It's the breaking of day. Here in verse 7, he preaches until midnight,
Right,
which is literally midnight, 12 o'clock. The time when our clocks on our end roll over, and but what you're previewing there is actually from um, verse 11. And if you notice in verse 11, Ezra, take us down there for a minute. At the the last phrase of 11 is even till break of day.
right,
So he departed. Even till break of day, not until the new day, till the next day. He said even till break of day. Break of day is dawn, when
right,
daylight begins. And that then is indicative of until morning. And I think
right,
some versions actually translated until morning. But that literally means until 6 o'clock in the morning, or till 4 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock, whenever it became daylight, the
right,
sun rose. It's the same phrasing, or very similar phrasing to when Peter denied Christ. You know, as the day broke, he went out, he wept bitterly.
But he's not preaching till daybreak, right? He preaches till midnight, and then we have the Utica situation, and then he talks till 6 a.m., right?
Well, we'd have to look at the wording of talk right here, but we can look at this as either a preaching incident, a teaching, or it could be just simply conversing with people.
Conversing.
So if either way, since he's talking, what are they doing?
listening.
It's not saying that he's conversing with, talking with them. It just says he talked a long while. So I tend to lean toward the preaching still. You know,
Okay.
he continues. You know, he again takes up preaching, or he is doing a Bible class type of a situation
Yeah.
where he's teaching and answering questions. Um, but I'm not perfect. I'm not inspired. So we would actually have to look at the Greek words and wording there. We could do that when we get to 11.
Right.
But
So,
either way, he's still talking. He's long-winded, like some other people we know in this
right.
particular room.
We got, that reminds me, man, half an hour is gone already. All right. Okay. Verse 8. We see we see that there were many lamps in the upper room where they were gathered together, and so this kind of sets us up for what's about to happen. If you can imagine for a moment, they're in an upper room. It's probably a relatively small room with many warm bodies, many warm lights, and Paul has been preaching until midnight at least, up until this point. So you're tired, it's hot, it's a small room, there's warm lights, and so Eutychus wants to listen, so he goes by the window. He wants to have the air cool him off. Well, that kind of didn't work out for him because Paul kept preaching. What? Now this is creative. This is creative license, if you will. Paul kept preaching. The lights got warmer. The room started to get darker. And then Eutychus fell down from the third loft and was taken up dead. Now that's a shock. I mean, and something else, they weren't to the ground. Like, they weren't in a room that was just barely off the ground. They were the third loft, pretty
Third
high up,
story.
third story, right. And so he, with the lights and the room and Paul preaching along, he fell. He fell down the window and from the third loft and was taken up dead.
Sam says, "Only let wind blow out the words that may not need expanding the wind for the learner."
Now, I think there is a different purpose that Luke has in mind than just Paul was long-winded and somebody fell asleep. I mean, yes, you can see that, but as you continue, I think there is a powerful statement here that goes to the credibility of the messenger because there is a miracle that happens, and the miracle confirms what Paul was just talking about. Looks like you're just bursting out the seams, Levi. What you got for me?
Well, we need to be mindful in this that miracles occurred, like you're going to point out, for the purpose of confirming the word. But who did we have gathered here? Was this was this a body of believers or a body of non-believers?
Believers.
So was it really necessary for them, for a miracle to confirm what Paul was saying?
It probably wasn't necessary.
Notice what verse 12 says. They were not a little comforted. In other words, this was done just like what happened with Tabitha. It was done for the comfort of the believers. Yes, it absolutely had a residual effect, as in it was going to be noised abroad through the countryside and would have brought in people because of it. But its primary function was to comfort the brethren. One thing I want to bring out that you didn't in this is the fact that they're meeting at night. Saturday in the Greek world was not a day of Sabbath rest. Saturday in the Greek world was a day of work, just like any other day. And many of these people that are coming together are what? They're slaves. They're slaves, servants, farmers, business people who have spent a long day doing what? Conducting business, working. Eutychus, as a young man, is not a child. And it lends itself well to what you were saying. And who of us here have not fallen asleep during a Priya sermon? Raise your hand if you've never fallen asleep during a sermon. I used to do it all the time. And that's when we've had a full night's rest. So imagine what it would be like if you had just worked an entire day in the hot sun and snuck away to come together to listen to, to meet with Paul, the apostle, on Sunday. There would be excitement, absolutely. But then as he kept talking, the heat of the day, the tiredness of being, having been out there working all day and now sitting in a room, relaxing, listening to Paul, cards were stacked against him, as somebody from the world might say.
Yeah. It's interesting because I never stopped to think about, okay, people fall asleep during sermons all the time. Why is Eutychus singled out? Why does Luke feel the need to... What purpose does this serve for the book of Acts? Any thoughts on that?
Well, everything, of course, was written for our learning. And there's a few things that we can learn. First off, make sure you come to listen with a heart like Eutychus. Because what did he want to do? He assembled even after a long day, because he wanted to be there. He wanted to listen. Secondly, what excuse do we have? By the way, that's a follow-up for the other one. What excuse do we have if we can't sit there and listen to the Word of God, and we don't have to work all day? So, a lot of us don't. What's our excuse? Eutychus spent a day. Or not. We're not told how he spent his day, but we are told that he came at night to listen to Paul, and he was tired. Secondly, as I was going to say, is another thing we can learn from it. Don't sit in an open window when you're listening to the preaching. Now, that may sound rather cliche or very humorous, and it was intended to be humorous, but let's face it. Don't put yourself into a dangerous situation when you can sit with the rest of the folks on the floor or whatever. Again, you point out that it would have been a small room. We're not told the size of the loft, just that it was up there on the third story.
Right.
But the thing about Utica's story is exercise common sense. Eutychus could have done stuff differently, but the entire story about Eutychus is got a lot of different things about it. We've mentioned two of them. Use common sense. We should be as desirous to attend the assembly as Eutychus was. And then the thing about the whole situation, the whole scenario, Paul has assembled with the disciples on the first day of the week. When we open up this passage, what we're looking at is our striped fish just came out and started hitting that intake, that downdraft, that exit for our filter, and it was just like and it caught me by surprise. And it just shoo, 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 shoo. I mean, just right in a row. It looked like a kite in the wind, bouncing around. But the wording here indicates, and the tense of the Greek, as it has been explained to me, lends itself to telling us that this was a common practice, and it's a different than. It was a set aside purpose. In other words, it was a specific purpose, and it was a common purpose or a commonly held practice. So it was that they came together every first day of the week for this practice of breaking bread. And I'm sure that I'm not gonna go any further in that, but if it's a commonly held practice of the brethren in the first century to gather together on the first day of the week for the purpose of breaking bread, what should our response be? What should our practice be? We have many things listed here, and I'm really hesitant because I'm sure you haven't finished you opened the floor, which is why it's why I'm going this way. But so it's your fault. But
Right. Yeah, I had one more thing to point out, maybe a couple,
but Eutychus, the story of Eutychus does several things. First off, it opens it allows, or it shows this commonly held practice. It shows Paul partaking in this commonly held practice. It shows the desire of the disciples to partake in this commonly held practice. And it shows the result of poor use of common sense, and yet God's love, Paul's love for the brethren at Troas, that he would go and he would resurrect, would do what was needing to resurrect Eutychus, give him back his life. Does there really need to be some ulterior motive to the story, other than putting it in here so that Theophilus might understand at a deeper level what is going on, or what?
Right.
No, it literally was just a side proof, or an additional proof, that Paul had the ability of the gifts of the Spirit,
I
and that
think it's
Paul really loved the brethren at Troas.
I think it serves two purposes.
Go ahead.
One, like you said, to solidify the common practice, and two, to once again highlight the age of miracles. I mean, it doesn't say. I guess it didn't need to confirm the word, but how much more so did Paul's impact them and comfort them, having Eutychus, who was just saw dead down on the floor? Everybody, now again, creative license. Everybody is probably rushes over to that window and sees him dead, and they see Paul just say, "All right, come on, his life is in him." Oh, by the way, that was something else. When Paul says, "Do not trouble yourselves, for his life is in him," we're told that the body without the spirit is dead. James 2:24. Now, maybe I'm stretching this, but in the scriptures, I think there is I think we can infer that there is I don't want to say time limit, or a uh, a specific amount of time before you die that you're actually dead. What's the word I'm looking for, Levi?
Grace period.
Grace period. Yeah, there was a technical word,
I
but
don't know them.
what?
I don't know them.
There's like some sort of stasis or some sort of time period between, and I don't know how long it is between when you die. Is there a medical term for the time in which you die until it's impossible to bring you back again? Is that just grace period?
No.
You know what
But I
I'm
don't
talking
know.
about,
I don't know the answer to your question.
right?
The answer to what you're saying, though, is verse 9.
fell down from the third story and was taken up dead.
Did the Bible lie?
No, I didn't say he didn't die.
There's no need to worry about this grace period or this period between. He was dead. His soul had left his body. He was flat out dead. What's beautiful about the miracle is here's a nugget. Here's a correlation for you, CJ. Do you remember the widow's son?
Mm-hmm.
Was it Elisha? I think it was Elisha. Was that either that or it was Elisha and the Shunammite, or it was the widow of Zarephath? I don't remember which, but I think it was Elisha though. When her son died, and she sent to the prophet, he came, and what'd he do?
He was gonna. He went with Elijah to raise him.
The prophet, whichever it was, Elijah or Elisha, stretched himself out on the son.
Right.
His face to the face, hands to the hands, etc. And he did that, I think, probably about 3 times for him. But anyway, he did that, and until the breath came back in the boy's body. Paul went down and fell on Eutychus. Hey, that's similar to CPR. But anyway, falling, it's medically true that basically you fall from a 3rd-story window, in 99% of the cases of such a fall, person dies. There's no bringing you back. The other 1% is the person actually gets up and walks away. This person died. Paul went down and fell on him and embracing him. Now, the people had picked him up. This young man was dead. There was no denying what they had seen, what they experienced. This guy was dead.
Yeah, he was taken up dead. It's always interesting. Like Eutychus, he was a faithful member, so he went to paradise, and then a few seconds later, he's like, "Wait, what?" And just gets ripped back to reality. Hi.
Yeah, that would be an interesting experience, to say the least, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Although, yeah, that's a subtopic. Well, did I ever tell y'all that I was born with that accident dead?
No, you never did.
Yeah, I was dead for about like 10 minutes, and the doctors brought me back.
Wow.
I don't remember what paradise is like, but if Jesus' words are true, I guess I was there for some time, and then
you got ripped back.
Yeah.
You were brought back. It's like you got revived.
Is that how that works? I mean, that must be. I mean, I don't know.
I don't either, CJ. And you know what? That's one of those things I think we'll leave up in the hands of God. Amen.
Right.
The thing of it is that, though, it's a beautiful thought to think that we get to look forward to the Savior's arms when we're finished with this life.
That's fine.
O'Shea says generally such a fall cracks ribs, breaks vertebrae, and snaps necks. Right. Not to mention that it also cracks craniums.
No, for what?
He's talking about your the fact that you were born dead
Oh.
or born without oxygen.
So, let's finish this up, at least this section. I guess we'll, save the journey next time. We got 5 minutes already. But, I want to make one more point.
Go ahead.
That's about breaking bread.
You've teased us long enough. Come on, let's go. We've been waiting all this time about breaking bread.
So in Acts 2:42, in Acts 2 we have two instances and two uses of the word was breaking of bread. One is in reference to in Acts 2:42, the Lord's Supper. That's tied into the apostles' doctrine, the breaking of bread and prayers. And then in Acts 2:46, we have common meals from house to house. They were with each other in the temple and then breaking bread from house to house. And I thought this was cool. Maybe I'm stretching this, but I see two parallels. And oh, so in Acts 2:42. Here's by the way, I'll say this and then I'll give a caveat, kind of dismantling what I just said. If it's so, this is one option. I'll just say this. This is one option. The apostles' doctrine, Paul, they came together to break bread. Paul preached, and then he was ready to depart on the morrow. Or they came together to break bread, but first Paul preached, and then Eutychus fell, and then at the end we have the Lord's Supper and talking, or we have at least Paul eating a common meal by himself or with the brethren. But so let me just do the two ways without intermingling. So at Acts 2:42, Paul preached. They continued steadfastly in the apostles' doctrine. They came together, ate the Lord's Supper, and Paul preached to them. That would be a good parallel to what happened many years ago in Acts chapter 2. And then in Acts 2:46, continuing with the pattern, they continued with one another daily. Of course, this next 20 is the same day, but here's this continuing. And now we have Paul talking a long while, and then they departed, and we see the breaking of bread, that fellowship that is had after, or above they ate the Lord's Supper, or sorry, the second option, that's the first option. The second option is, and I don't know which one is correct, they came together to break bread, but Paul preached first, and then Eutychus fell, and then they finally ate the Lord's Supper together. That's just some thoughts to consider. I don't know which one that is for sure, and I'm not gonna be hard and fast on it. So that's just some of my thoughts there at the end of
All
the.
right. First off, CJ, you are going to have to um, really organize your thoughts a little bit more because you probably lost everybody like you lost me. Um, you have two options for the meaning of breaking bread, which you did a really fairly pretty decent job explaining. In Acts 2:42, what you have is breaking of bread, a phrase that is used in conjunction with the apostles' doctrine, fellowship, and with prayers. This lets us know that it was part um, of a religious, if you will, practice, something that was part of the doctrine, part of a religious observance, a rite, um, because it says doctrine, fellowship, prayers. We know then that it was part of the doctrine, part of the apostles' teaching, something that they were taught to do. This is not something that just simply was a natural occurrence. In Acts chapter 2, verse 47, we have the natural occurrence. They came together, they continuing with one accord in the temple and breaking bread from house to house, did eat their meat with gladness and singleness of heart. Contextually, 2 verse 47 means literally a meal, a daily meal. That is, they broke their fast. They broke their, they ate, partook of a meal from house to house. They were daily with one another. It's not meaning the same thing as the religious rite or observance that was what was being meant in 242. Moving over to um, Acts chapter 20, verse 7, what we have is the disciples coming together. Now, if it was going to be something of a common meal, a daily meal, they wouldn't have needed to come together into a separate place. They could have just been met in one of their homes, right? Acts chapter
Right.
2:47 says they went, even though they were together in the temple, they still ate their meals where? Was it in the
House.
temple? No, it was in their house, in their houses. So we can tell that this practice was not for a common meal. Hence, like we say, the argument or the idea, the Greek and of the tense and the meaning of that passage lending itself to this being a common practice to come together to a separate place and partake of this breaking of bread, this religious rite. The next thing we notice in here, since they came together on the first day of the week to do this, it was that they came together every first day of the week, not just on the first day of the first day of the week, uh, the first day of the week of the month,
Right.
or the last first day of the month, or only the first day of the week around Passover.
Right. Yes.
This was a commonly held every first day of the week type of and that's the syntax that's being used here in 20 verse 7. They come together to break bread, and what do we have coupled with it? Like you point out here, they have preaching, i.e., the apostles' doctrine.
Right.
Paul being an apostle, he's bringing a doctrine, he's preaching. Well, okay. So the disciples assembling together in the apostles' doctrine and breaking of bread, we have three of the items from Acts 2:42.
Right.
Now,
Yeah.
Paul preaching.
You're saying what I poorly communicated.
Yeah, that's why I'm trying to say that you need because you were all over the place, switching from argument to argument to argument back to argument, and that's why you lost me because I wasn't sure what you were talking about because your mind was racing at 100 miles an hour, and so your mouth was trying to keep up.
Yeah, I sometimes just get stuck and I don't know the best way to say it because I didn't want to sound like I was saying one thing and
Right.
excluding the other, so I really didn't know what to say first.
Now, right, and when did the first day of the week occur? At what time did it begin? In the Jewish calendar, underway. Now, remember, we're still at this point in time still being considered under the Jewish. The Christians were still considered under the Jewish faith as a sect of that, right? And that's why we still look to the Jewish calendar for this answer.
Right.
The Jewish day begins at 6 in the evening or sundown in the evening, and it went till sundown the next evening. So if they're assembling on the first day of the week, then we're in evening, Saturday evening, basically, right after the Sabbath got finished.
Right.
Because Paul's preaching until when? Midnight. And so it is no stretch of the imagination to say that when Eutychus fell out of the window after midnight, what day of the week was it?
First day of the week.
It's still the first day of the week. We made that comment when we talked about the sailing, right? About him abiding for 7 days. So he goes down, falls upon Eutychus. Paul does. He comes up. What really confuses us, on a general basis, I use the us as mankind, is the use of the word of the phrasing here in 11 when it says, when he therefore was come up again and had broken bread and eaten and talked a long while, even till break of day, so he departed. It leads, it begs the question: are we still talking about? And this is what you were pointing to. Are we still talking about breaking of bread as in the common meal, or as in the liturgical, the religious rite, or are we talking about breaking of bread in a common meal type of a thing?
And
The
my not poorly rounded answer is it depends on how you look at the 7. If they broke bread before Eutychus fell, or here in 11.
Well, you and I've had discussions about this before. If you might remember our talk about 1 Corinthians chapter 13, or rather 11, excuse me. And I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm not going to get into a big heated debate or anything with you, which both of us say thank you, over 1 Corinthians 11. Had 1 Corinthians been written by this time?
No.
Okay. Is this Paul's last missionary trip?
Yes.
So,
Wait.
Go ahead.
Doesn't he write it on this trip or on the second trip?
Well, remember that if First Corinthians was written and includes chapter 16, we talked about last in Acts chapter 19.
Oh,
Actually, we
right.
actually talked about this last week, rather.
So it had to be written about this time.
It had to have been written before, because where was Corinthians written from?
Uh, well, I don't remember Rome.
He hadn't been to Rome by this time, but yet.
Right, but
Remember, he says, now concerning the collection for the saints, as I have given order to the churches of Galatia, even so do ye. And he mentions, of course, the meeting. Now, I will come to you. This is verse 5 of chapter 16. When I shall pass through Macedonia, for I do pass through Macedonia. And it may be that I will abide, yea, and winter with you, that ye may bring me on my journey whithersoever I go. For I will not see you now by the way, but I trust to tarry with you a while with you, if the Lord permits. Now, verse 8. But I will tarry at Ephesus until Pentecost.
right.
For a great door is effectual and open. So he was waiting. He was going to tarry there at Ephesus until Pentecost. Yet, according to Luke's account here, he left Philippi at the days of Passover. And according to the survey of First Corinthians, Paul was in Ephesus at the time of this writing during the course of his third missionary journey, which was in Acts chapter 19.
Right. So
So
just before this.
So then let me ask you about 1 Corinthians 11. Was 1 Corinthians 11 written by this time?
No.
If he's already been through Macedonia and Corinth and Macedonia and Philippi
Oh, yes,
to
yes.
Troas,
It would have been because it would have been the Lord.
right? So he's already picked up the contribution for the saints at Judea
Right.
and Jerusalem. So does that bring any clarity to our discussion on Acts chapter 20? Where if Paul had told them about the breaking of bread, the Lord's Supper, you see, if this is the breaking of the Lord's Supper, there's no issue in relation to 1 Corinthians 13 or 11 rather. However, if this is a daily meal or a regular meal, then it throws out a common argument that some brethren make regarding 1 Corinthians 11.
No, not necessarily, but I won't get
Right.
into my details.
Let me rephrase that. It can throw out a common argument. Because this was a separate place that they assembled in the third loft. So the other thing that I want to point out, and this is entirely different than that argument, is this. Their purpose was to come together to break bread, to preach on the first, and to hear preaching and abide in the apostles' doctrine on the first day of the week. That in and of itself leads me to conclude in the context that we're still dealing with the service. An interrupted service, mind you. I mean, who wouldn't have been interrupted? I mean, a guy falling out of a window and dying, that would have been quite the interruption
Right.
of any service. And that young man being resurrected would have been even more of an interruption.
Right.
But it's still part of the service.
Right.
And I do not look to see Paul eating alone in front of everybody else. Good night, Craig. You have a good night. Especially seeing how it wasn't just him that was departing, because Luke was there, and his companions, Sopater and Aristarchus, Secundus, Gaius, Timothy, and
Right.
Tychicus, and Trophimus. These were all there, and were, departing. So they would have all been eating. So to signal, this is my reasoning for saying that I don't, for it not being a common meal, but rather the Lord's Supper. Take that as you will. Like CJ says, there's some people that may believe that it's a common meal, and this is my reason. Contextually, I don't think it is.
Yeah.
And this is my reasoning for it.
I think the same word is used in verse 7 and verse 11.
Breaking bread or broken bread.
Broken bread.
We'd have to look at that in the Greek.
It's interesting, at least in the English, it's in the future tense, to break bread, and then had broken bread. And so they started a task, and then they completed a task.
That is a very good point to bring out, and I think that let's look at it in another way. Paul was an apostle; he had authority, and by his authority, with his authority, okay. Let me put it this way: when my family gets together, even if it's at my house, I will call upon Dad to lead the prayer. Why?
Because he's older than you?
He's my elder. And to me, Dad is my authority. I have always been in subjection to my elders, to my fathers. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your fathers and mothers. And so if we were in a gathering and the Apostle Paul was in our midst, who would we be looking to as our leader?
The Apostle Paul.
Right, to lead the assembly. The main leader would be the Apostle Paul. Which is really fascinating, as Paul, also as an apostle never abuses his authority. We'll get into that when he comes back into Jerusalem in another chapter or so. But right. It's a very beautiful picture, and one that people don't also think of. But so with him there, and he had broken bread, that's simply his, he's leading.
Right.
So, you need to look at this in that kind of a connotation as well.
I imagine this as we would call it a table talk. He's heading up the Lord's Supper, preparing the saints' minds, and then possibly and talks a long while with them. This could be separate, but maybe it's in connection with what they just did or with what they were doing. The Lord's Supper talk, although it seems he took bread and eaten and talked a long while. Seems disconnected, but there's a lot of stuff we could say about this text. It's really, the Word of God is really fascinating in that regard.
I'm chasing down something that you just tripped in my memory. So if you hang on a minute, I want to see if I can find it.
I don't think I'm right about that being the Lord's Supper talk, because even in the English grammar it says, and had broken bread and eaten, done, and talked a long while. So this was after the Lord's Supper. I never seen the came together to break bread in verse 7, and then had broken bread in verse 11. That's pretty. To me, that's probably the strongest evidence I have that that those breaking breads are connected.
Oh, wait. Maybe it was in that one.
What you looking for?
No. The Lord's Supper was only in 3 of the Gospels, right?
Matthew 26, Mark 14,
And Luke 22.
Luke 22, and then I don't think John has it. John's the odd one out, as we say.
Well, he had the Passover supper in John 13, but I don't recall him. I had thought it had said something about when he had broken bread, but in each case, it's like when he took bread and break it. So anyhow, I thought there was a similarity in the wording between that and what Paul had done. But all right, so Sam says it's easy to talk about the word and that study and to forget to look at context, and I think he meant context. It's easy to look at the word that we're studying, to really forget to look at the context in its whole. And the thing that we look at and that CJ and I strive so hard to do is to, when we look at a passage, we look at the passage, whether it be a word or an actual verse, a phrase. We look at it in its surrounding verses. We look at it in its chapter setting. We look at it in the book setting, and then we try to look at it in the setting of it in the entirety of the Bible, and we try to consider its the setting, the context in its social setting outside of the scriptures as well, because there are some things that you have to look outside to see, to look at the import or how it would affect people. For example, when you see Jesus talking about how hard it was for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven, it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle. Well, you and I immediately think of that little sewing accessory that your mother used to have on her pincushion, where you thread the thread through that little eye on a needle and you start sewing your garments, or the tear, the quilt, etc. But that's not what he's talking about,
Right.
because if we didn't understand that geologically, that the eye of a needle happens to be a very narrow passageway where you have to unload a beast of burden, i.e. a camel in this instance, to get them to go through this rock passage that is very narrow on either side, to where the camel can barely squeeze through, then you wouldn't know what that meant.
Right.
So you have to look at outside the cultural the cultural socio-economical norms outside of the Bible in relation to what's being said to understand,
Right.
in addition to everything that's going on inside as well. Was that last physical meal that Jesus has shared toward the end of John on the water shore with fish on the fire? Just now wondering. That was the last physical meal I think we were told of anyway that he shared.
Yeah.
Remember, he appeared for that intervening time, during those 50 days between Passover and Pentecost. He appeared all the way up to, I think it was 10 days before the Pentecost.
Yeah. I think
Several times throughout those 50 days. So for 9 to 40 days he was jumping hither, thither, and yon, and showing himself to over 500 people.
It's interesting that well, this is off topic, but it's interesting that when you get over to 1 Corinthians 15, Paul says Jesus appeared to over 500 brethren at one time, at once.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
That shows a lot, and yet on the day of Pentecost there was 120 people gathered together. That's amazing. Or actually, by the day of Pentecost, there were 120 people gathering in Jerusalem alone.
So Jesus, that makes me wonder if Jesus had another discourse that we don't read about when he appeared to those 500 people.
Well, probably he talked to them about other things, but I think that is best summed up under John chapter 20, verses 30 and 31.
Many other things Jesus did, and really not written.
Right.
Yeah,
And why are they not written? Because it's not pertinent to what we need to know. Right.
that's right.
And there's many people that try to make a big ado about nothing.
That's right. I think that was a very good study. Thank you, Levi.
Yeah.
I apologize that we 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 6 verses? Yes.
We went 6. We went 7 through 12. So that was 6 verses. So, but
Sorry.
when there's so much meat involved in 6 verses, it lends itself to a lot to cover.
That's right.
And we should never be apologizing for digging deeply into the scriptures. Sam says there's nothing wrong about wondering. Well, we have to be careful with that, though, Sam, because we should never involve ourselves in in these useless disputes, these useless, the entertaining these useless ideas. Let's be frank. Well, no, I'm Levi. I'm not Frank. Let's get serious though, and realize that we need to remain. There's enough in the scriptures that just remaining in those is going to take us through a lifetime to understand and master. We don't need to add any more to it through senseless wondering. And what was it? Oshea pointed out yesterday, or not yesterday, the other day. Shun profane and useless babblings.
That's right.
These questionings. It's these questions that are never answered by Scripture. That we can entertain them for a few seconds and then move on. Don't let them reside. Don't let them keep knocking about your brain, because you know what? That's the devil's playground.
Right.
So,
well,
you're right.
Probably we have to stop for today, unless we want to go longer, since we're not going to have the study later next week, but I think that'll be good.
Next week, of course, CJ is going to be gone. At this point in time, it looks like he is anyway. And I will be in charge. We're going to be dealing with mental health. Not that I'm an expert, but I will be looking through Wayne Jackson's wonderful book on the Bible and mental health to see if there might be some things that we can glean from it as I study over this week, to bring you some interesting insights on the Bible and what it says about mental health. And hopefully that'll help many of us as we deal with people, as we deal with our own struggles, whether it be with depression or other issues. So,
yeah, and whether or not I go, I think I'll let you do that next Monday, since it's already planned. So,
all righty then.
If I don't go, I'll just be here.
You'll tune in, huh?
I wanted to make you aware that the time has finally come.
Is that tomorrow you start the class?
Tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night he starts the class and then skips a week. So this is like an introduction teaser tomorrow, and then so make sure you tune in tomorrow night for CJ's evening edification class at the usual evening edification time. He will be conducting the class on the master plan.
His eternal plan.
Okay, same thing. It's the master's plan.
That's right. And that is the title of our guide. It's downstairs. Written by Jared Tallman. If you want a book, message me. I'll send you a link so you can purchase it. But
all right.
have your Bibles limbered up. It's gonna be the exact opposite of what we did in Romans. we stayed in one book for 8 months, and then we now for 3 months roughly, we're gonna go all over the Bible. So have your Bibles ready. I'll try and have most of it up in my PowerPoint because there's so much. But just in case, have your Bibles limbered up and ready to study.
I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. Thank you all for being here, and remember, we want to do 3 things here at CEM. I almost said here at StreamYard. We want to glorify God, edify the saints, and answer any spiritual questions you may have. Thank you all, and God bless.
We hope indeed that you have been edified to a closer walk with God. That way, whether we wake to serve God tomorrow here on this earth or we wake to serve God tomorrow up there, you know where we'll be because we'll see you then.